thank you to our awesome audience who has made it here today. I appreciate seeing all our familiar faces, our core group. You guys, you really do make up like what in my brain is like the core Stride community. So thanks for always being there. We have some pretty cool announcements today. I think that, as you guys know, ST Comdex launched this week, which is super exciting for us. We're going to talk through just some new DeFi projects that are not live yet. They're ones that are a little bit like further out on the horizon, but we kind of just, want to jump on the momentum and get excited about those projects as well. We're going to talk a little bit about protocol-owned liquidity as a concept, just because this is something that we've been thinking a lot about behind the scenes and want to talk to you about what that sort of looks like when we're discussing it, and then just some general updates. But yeah, I'm going to pass the microphone off to Vishal, and if you guys have questions, ask them in the chat, and we'll either answer as we go or save them for the end. But yeah.
A few quick updates. So one, ST Comdex launched yesterday. If you all take a look at app.stride.zone right now, you can see you can mint ST Comdex. This is our first new zone we onboarded where the host zone did almost all the kind of initial testing. So it's a really good sign that the docs are getting to a point where other teams can kind of submit PRs and with testing kind of in a really good spot where the Stride core contributors only have to do the kind of mainnet testing, which was relatively quick for Comdex. So that was really great. Comdex also kind of a pretty exciting one, I think, because they're also hoping to move a lot of the DeFi apps in their chain to be LST focused. So I think their main pool, they're potentially thinking of moving from Comdex Atom to ST Comdex ST Atom. And they're also thinking of potentially moving, a lot of the other kind of main pools on their decks to be LST focused. There's also like stablecoins, CMST, that I think ST Comdex should be allowed to mint relatively soon. And so just a pretty exciting time for the ecosystem. It's a new push for Stride into like this other DeFi ecosystem that could be, could be the start of kind of a LST focused DeFi ecosystem. Not that it'll be the only one in Cosmos, but this one was, I think, very organically formed, which is, I think, a really good sign. We're getting, a lot of other ecosystems also interested in kind of moving to LST focus. I think exciting new age for LSTs in Cosmos. And yeah, if you want to buy ST Comdex or a slot of ST Comdex, you can do it on CSwap, which is Comdex's main DEX. So yeah, that's all exciting. On that note, next update is ST IBCX, just launched this morning. I don't know if everyone is familiar with IBCX, but Ion DAO, which is a big DAO kind of tightly affiliated with Osmosis, has a really great product called IBCX, which is, I believe, the first index token in Cosmos. When you mint IBCX, you hold like Atom, Osmo, Chuno, Evmos, a little bit of Stride. You hold this basket of all these tokens, but they're not staked, so you kind of miss out on the staking yield. But ST IBCX will make it so anytime one of those tokens has a Stride LST, so for example, Atom has ST Atom, Juno has ST Juno, and so on, it will actually hold the liquid stake version. So if someone is coming into Cosmos for the first time, and they're like, hey, this is a really exciting space, I want to have some exposure just to everything, and not really think too hard about which tokens are good. Maybe they want to have some token level bets, but want to also have an index level bet. They can now do that with ST IBCX and still earn all the staking rewards. So I think it's going to be exciting. We'll see how it is. It's kind of like a new experiment. I saw a few broadly. There's some that are like, I think, AVAX, ETH, Sol, or something like that. There are a few of these small products in the last bull market. But I think this is going to be one that has more clear KMF, like Cosmos is one somewhat unified space. And so I think hopefully we'll see some more demand here, especially from new people entering Cosmos. So curious to see how this goes, but I think it's been a long time coming. And so
when you say it's definitely like an experiment for Cosmos because we haven't had an index token like this before, I'm curious about like the different directions this could go.
Yeah, in terms of like where people could use ST IBCX in the future, like where it could, like how it could maybe grow as a product.
When you were saying how effective this is in the ecosystem, like
in my mind, there's like a really big kind of outcomes here where I could see on the bull case, people coming in from Ethereum or Solana or anywhere else in the Cosmos and are like, well, it's such a cool space. Let me dip my toes in. Maybe I'll buy some Atom. Then they see all these other tokens and they're like, oh, how do I get all these tokens? Then STIBCX, I think, is like most natural thing for them to buy. And so there's this world, I think, where a lot of new inflows coming in go into STIBCX, particularly the more retail-y inflows, but maybe even a few institutions as well. And in particular, if people are trying to think of like, I want to use collateral to support a stablecoin in Cosmos, or I want to use collateral to trade against or anything like that, you might see some people starting to move towards IBCX baskets as opposed to like individual tokens, just if they're like generally long the whole ecosystem. So that there's potentially a really big bull case where it might be one of the most popular tokens kind of in the space, where even $100 million of demand for STIBCX would be less than a lot of other tokens, would be a really good product, I think. And so I think we might see a world where that happens. But in the bear case, I think people might want more control over their tokens. So maybe people are like, oh, I like this basket, but you know what? I'm not actually a fan of Juno, or I'm not actually a fan of Osmo, or whatever else is in the basket, and or like Umi or Mars or anything else. And so for those people who don't want to hold those tokens, you might instead think, hey, I'd rather just go buy the tokens that you like, and I don't really care about this index. And I don't have a good sense of where people fall on these two. It's kind of like a trade-off between convenience. On the one hand, if you obviously STIBCX, you don't have to think about it, or like rebalance for you, just kind of like set and forget it. But maybe you missed out on some gains that you might have made by buying. What we've seen in more mature markets like equities is that the index tokens are really, really popular. So things like S&P 500 or NASDAQ or Dow Jones are really popular, and people overwhelmingly want to buy those over individual tokens. Cosmos is a little bit less mature than U.S. equities, but it's possible we see something similar there. But yeah, little bits of an experiment. So we'll see how it goes over the next few months. I think the time I think this will really shine is when all flows come in from other spaces. So people coming in from Ethereum or Solana, I think that could be the moment when STIBCX really takes off. But we'll see what happens. We're all in this experiment together. Next update is just that we have a lot of new kind of exciting DeFi protocols that are quite interested in using ST tokens. All of these are kind of pre-launch, but they will be launching soon and are pretty committed, I think, to using LSTs, in particular Stride's LSTs. One is Entry Point, which is another ETF/index token, similar to STIBCX, but I think has a little bit more customizability and taking a slightly different spin on it. So I think they're also intending on using LSTs as a core part of their index and basket. Another one that just went live that is really exciting is Nolus, that does basically self-repaying loans. So this is still early, but one thing that maybe they'll do in Nolus soon is you put down your ST Atom and you borrow USDC against it, and then over time your ST Atom yield it just automatically pays off your loan. So let's say you have $100 of ST Atom, you borrow $20 against it. After a year, your ST Atom yield might just pay off your $20 loan. And so that's a really exciting use case that I think a lot of people might want, especially in this bear market. People don't want to sell the token because everything's at such a good price, but might want some more liquidity. And so for these type of situations, I think it's really helpful to be able to borrow against your tokens. Even in the bull market too, you're like, oh, I really believe in Atom, I really believe in Stride or any of these tokens. Being able to borrow against them, so you don't have to sell, but then have that interest automatically repay your loan, so you can just kind of set it and forget it. In my mind, is really, really cool. And also, I think tax advantage, which is really nice. So you get a lot of benefits here. But this is very early, but just a little bit of alpha upcoming potential features this year for ST tokens, or hopefully soon this year, given Nolus is already live. Yeah, so I think Nolus, honestly, in my mind, one of the most exciting opportunities for tokens because it's such a novel use case to be able to borrow against your holdings without really having to think about it. So really looking forward to that. I know there's been some word on the Twitter sphere recently about the Curve founder borrowing against his Curve. It's maybe the most extreme example of this, but you can think of much more healthy ways. Like I have $1,000 of Statum and I want to go borrow $100 against it. So excited to see that come to Cosmos. One other one that I think is going to be pretty exciting. There's a new protocol called Tenet that is kind of in development. That is thinking about doing kind of restaking for Cosmos. So think of if you all are familiar with Eigenlayer, it's kind of like a mixture, in my mind, of Eigenlayer and Berachain, where you can use restaking to get more yield and use that to kind of bootstrap liquidity. So it's just kind of that, not live yet, but just an exciting direction of things people are trying on top of LSTs, using LSTs kind of core primitive to build a lot of cooler things on top of it. And then the last thing that we've heard some rumblings on that I think is a little further out, but could still come to fruition in a few months is a fixed rate protocol built on top of LSTs. So something like, hey, I'm going to deposit my ST Atom here, and I'm just going to earn a fixed yield of 5 or 10% in USDC, or maybe 10 or 15% in Atom, wherever it is, where you can deposit your tokens in. And then regardless of staking yield fluctuating or whatever else it might be, you're just locked in your yield for a year or two. We've seen this was really popular with Anchor back in the Terra days, or it's really comforting to know, I'll get X yield as opposed to something that's variable. Particularly for people who I think are newer to the space or newer to crypto, it's more similar to kind of like a savings account type product where they deposit money and they earn a fixed amount of savings. And so that's something that could become possible either on top of Nolus or on top of a few other protocols that are being built out. So that's all really exciting kind of upcoming DeFi projects, a little bit of upcoming alpha. A few other kind of just quick updates from our end. So first, the V10 upgrade for Stride just got put into voting. And this upgrade does a few kind of small things. It upgrades SDK 46 to 47, fixes a few things like minor issues from an audit report in the past, and then adds a few other small things like rate limiting parameters for most of the tokens, add a little bit more security. Yeah, the main reason though with V10 is that the ICS transition is coming up, and so V10 kind of standardizes a lot of things on Stride, like the SDK version, IBC version, and stuff, which should make the ICS transition smoother. That's up for voting right now. Go take a look, peruse the source code, and see if you like it, and vote yes or no. Yeah. Okay. Next, kind of small update. This is not anything that's happening today, but just a trend that we've been observing that is kind of accelerating right now in Cosmos is this notion of protocol-owned liquidity. So what we mean by this is a protocol like the Cosmos Hub or Juno actually uses their own funds. So the protocol's funds, so either community pool or foundation or any kind of pool that's owned by the DAO, and use those funds to bootstrap a DeFi ecosystem in their space by funding a like ST Juno or ST Atom pool. And so we've seen a few of these paths. So Juno has passed such a prop. Atom, with ICS Stride onboarding onto ICS, Atom's also passed the same prop. So we'll get right around 450,000 Atom as liquidity for Stride, like somewhere around like $4 to $5 million. And we've seen a lot of other chains kind of start talking about this in their community proposals. So I think we talked about this. I think Comdex might do this. We're just seeing this become more and more of a trend. And I think it'll catch on because it's one, very low cost of protocol, because the protocol already has, let's say Juno lying around. Moving into an AMM doesn't really change the risk profile. You're still exposed to Juno. And then also really helps get deep liquidity for the ST token, which we think should really help DeFi in that space. People can now build on top of, let's say, ST Juno and make more and more compelling apps. Yeah, that's very exciting. It also moves towards a more sustainable model for ST token liquidity. So Stride in the initial days is incentivizing liquidity in these pools, but our hope is that over time, more and more of this liquidity becomes protocol owned, which decreases the cost to maintain it, and also I think will result in net much deeper liquidity. Yeah, so I think very good implications for sustainability on Stride. Like it makes the protocol long term much more sustainable. But then also it's good for the protocol too, because it gives more ownership in the hands of the protocol. The protocol can vote if it thinks, hey, actually Stride doesn't have the features I want, or needs to implement this thing, or is not doing the things you want. Can go take their liquidity out, which is their provider. That kind of keeps Stride more accountable too. And our hope is to always be the best LST, and this kind of aligns incentives a little better with other chains. They can also be more confident that Stride will continue to be the best product in the space. In terms of any potential concerns about POL, I in my mind, I think this is just clear positive direction for us to go in, although potentially this path of exiting is maybe a con, although in my mind it'd be much more like a pro in that it aligns incentives much better with all the relevant parties. So I think this is really exciting. Hopefully by the end of the year, most ST token liquidity becomes protocol owned across all the ST tokens. We've also been talking to a few protocols before launch, so protocols like Say or Slashio, or maybe even Parachain could potentially do this, at launch, have protocol owned liquidity to jumpstart their DeFi ecosystem. So that's a really exciting step, I think. And then two quick things I know have been going on for a while, so we're almost done. But just ICS and LSM are both coming up really soon. It's been a really big push for the last few months. It's been taking a lot of dev time, a lot of summer's time, a lot of kind of the whole team, messaging, PR, BD. They're really big, but I think they're both coming to fruition. So ICS will be kind of first of its class in crypto to have a chain transition to become a consumer chain is a really exciting notion, I think. And we've been doing lots of test runs for this, but it looks like everything's going to go smoothly. So we're on track to have that done. I think late July is the transition, mid-late July. And then LSM as well is onboarding onto the hub. So what LSM will allow is people who have Atom that's natively staked on the hub can convert that to ST Atom immediately without having to wait 21 days. So this is also, in the final stages of being reviewed and audited. But I think both of these should go live next month. So we're really exciting kind of to open up this new chapter for Stride. I think it'll open up a lot of potential TVL to be captured. And that's all.
Thanks, Vishal. That was a really awesome collection of updates. There's so much to be thinking about right now. Just as far as, even just like the very near future for what Stride looks like in the Cosmos landscape, especially I feel like I haven't been particularly tapped into the conversation around protocol and liquidity, like I feel like I understand it conceptually, but as far as the cultural sort of shift towards that within Cosmos and like kind of having it be this very meaningful bandwagon that we kind of, seemingly hope other people adopt over time is very cool. Do you see where like the stem of protocol owned liquidity started? If that makes sense, like what do you think kind of like initiated this trend that we're seeing right now?
That is a great question. I think part of it was somewhat community driven. So I think Evnos was the first I had heard about it, where Evnos community was talking about, how can we kickstart even more DeFi on our chain. And I think that they initialized the conversation. But then I think the Juno POL was entirely community driven. So I think it was just a community member proposed it, community voted on it, and then it happened. And then Adam, taking inspiration from that, we proposed similar thing with Adam on the ICS proposal. Although I'm not actually sure where the first notion of protocol and liquidity came from. Although I first heard about it through Evnos. But maybe someone in the audience might know, actually. A lot of you guys have much better historical knowledge than I do.
TS Ray, yeah, feel free to join us on stage. We always invite people to come up on stage. So if you want to just share your thoughts.
Majority of the, like, for example, let's talk Atom. I think it is the, probably in a simple term, Atom is the BTC of our Cosmos ecosystem. So it's always going to be not so sexy, but maybe a central point and store of value, which doesn't lose value. In terms of protocol on liquidity, I'm not so sure. So the 20% inflation, for example, one of the biggest holders is, I think, the Coinbase team of Atom. And the sell pressure is going to keep it down, even for Stride. And I had a nice discussions earlier with Vishal as well. I think the hub going to be continuously sacrificed at the altar for the benefit of the ecosystem. And I love it, for Stride, it's brilliant because there's so much Atom being printed for us to be for us to be successful, whereas the wallets of Atom holders gonna carry dust. One Atom, one Stride per year per 1,000 Atom staked. So you guys see it as beneficial. I don't see it. If you think that many people are just here for tech, that's wrong way. So I just feel that I think for Stride we should, as you said in your response, that we should always have opportunity and voting to leave when we can, so that it's not a controlling, bullying stake, much rather than a marriage of choice. So I don't think there is any protocol-owned liquidity kind of thing. Most of it is just sovereign cost app chains trying to solve problem. We saw the spectacular fall of Juno. We have seen a spectacular fall of Evmos. What I don't want is a spectacular fall of Stride. So I want Stride to be very focused on Stride itself. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, Ray. So first, I totally agree. I also don't want this fall for Stride. I want Stride to focus on itself. One nice thing, I think Stride has some like early signs of PMF. Like I think the product has demand. People, are willing to kind of pay for the utility that ST Atom takes, and Stride holders benefit from that. Totally hear what you're saying about Atom, and it does make sense. I hear you. I think the amount of Stride you're getting is not super high. But the way I think about it is, if Atom has no DeFi around it, it's ultimately, I think, going to lead to the token not being that valuable in the long run. But being able to have some sort of DeFi built around Atom, I think will allow it to become maybe more like Solana or one of these other kind of chains where there's more ecosystem around it. And I think right now that's been challenging for Atom because of all the staking yields. And our hope is that this will start kind of bringing in actual use cases or apps on top of Atom. So totally totally hear you on the literal yield for that. But I would say if the use cases for Atom go up, so we go from having a few DeFi venues to having a lot more, having lots of trade on these venues, that could 10x Atom, or bring it to the kind of next stage. So I think that's the hope. Although I totally hear you that the literal yield they're getting is not high at all. And then the other thing I'd say is, in my mind, crypto is a lot of it is built around these narratives around what is kind of the story that this token is selling. I'm not saying this is true for all tokens, but it's true for quite a lot of them. For example, Bitcoin I think is mostly a story driven token. It's true for I think a lot of the tokens that don't earn revenue, and Atom maybe earns a little revenue right now, but not that much. I think this does quite a bit in terms of furthering the narrative and the story for Atom, which my hope is will bring in a lot of people from other spaces. There's been kind of a lot of innovation on Ethereum that's had a lot of attention over the last few months. But I think we're starting to see some that move towards Cosmos. And I think Zaki talked about this online too. I think we have like 12 months to really capture crypto mindshare. And the hope, from myself at least, is ICS will really help capture more mindshare and bring in more traders and devs into end users into the space. But it's a little bit of an experiment, so we'll see how it goes. But I do agree with you. I think it's definitely good for Stride at the very least. I really hope it's also going to be good for Atom. I'm personally, very long Atom and have a lot of my portfolios in Atom, and obviously Atom doing well is really good for Stride as well. So at the very least, I think it aligns incentives. On the protocol and liquidity, this is also a really good point. I think TSRA and Catwad both bring a good point. For the smaller networks, they don't have that much protocol and liquidity. Totally agree. But I think the way I think about it is it's more like a diff from where they are today to where they could be in the future. So a protocol that only has $1 million of DeFi might go to $10 million DeFi once they use protocol and liquidity to kind of bootstrap in the initial phase. And the hope is that can build some sort of spiral where these chains start getting bigger. One nice thing about Stride, though, that's a little bit different from this, is Stride is, and always has been, very neutral. So our goal is not to pick any one token and kind of only support that one. And so the hope is that, all the chains within Cosmos start going POL and maybe it doesn't guarantee their ecosystem takes off, but increases their chance by 10% or 15%. If we have enough of those and Stride is exposed to all of them, if a few of those chains end up becoming big, Stride shares in the success of all of those chains. And so you get kind of this diversified basket of different potentially DeFi ecosystems in Cosmos. And the hope is that all of them do really well and all take off. But Stride hedges its bets a little bit and that it's exposed to everyone.
I'm going to bring up SHA-256.
So I was really in love with the growth of ST Atom, well, all of Stride assets, but specifically ST Atom, like the first few months of the year, like January through March. It felt like ST Atom was increasing at a rate of something like 10,000 to 20,000 per day, which I thought was insane growth. But I think there was a lot of DeFi protocols like Mars and Umi, places where people could use their ST Atom to get yield. So we saw this tremendous growth. It looks like it's slowed down a ton in the last, I would say, like 30 days or so. And I was just curious if the team had thoughts about why that has happened, and kind of just address that change in the acceleration of ST assets in the last month or so.
So really great question, and you're totally right. So, Stride was growing pretty fast. I think at a rate of right around 7 to 12% per week, which is I think quite high for any early stage startup, and has slowed down. We have a few kind of theories as to why. So one is I think people want to get more SC tokens when they want to trade more or take leverage or kind of take on different positions in the space or generally participate in DeFi. And I think over the last month, definitely, we've seen just a really crushing bear market. Tokens all over the ecosystem are at all-time lows. People, everything's kind of falling. There was that big liquidation last week. And so I think there's been just a pullback from participation in DeFi. Stride is certainly exposed to, which is a little unfortunate, as well as a bit of a slowdown on new launches. So there's a bunch of new stuff like lending protocols and stable coins, and those slow down, which I think also has hurt Stride's growth. But I think when not if, but definitely when things start recovering and you get out of the steep bear, I think then we see more people starting to participate back in DeFi and take a little bit more risk on positions. And I think that will overwhelmingly involve then liquid staking. Like if I want to lever up on Atom, I think the easy way to do that right now is ST Atom, borrow against it, buy some more Atom with that, and then liquid stake that, keep going. So I think we'll start seeing more once people want a little more risk on. The other thing that we're trying to do is also just expand both the attractiveness and the utility for ST tokens, as well as to add more places to deploy them. So things we talked about before, like NOLAS, I think we'll also start adding more utility. But then the really big one I think will hopefully kickstart growth again is LSM. So right now there's only a fixed pool of like liquid Atom that people will like liquid stake. And even though that pool is like 100 million Atom big, a lot of that is not really usable. And that a lot of it's either like in some institutional account like Coinbase, or it's in some like foundation address, or it's in some cold storage wall where like that user is taking a 5-year view on Atom and might touch their tokens. So of the 100 million, only a small portion of that actually moves on any given day. And so I think we're starting to hit some growing pains there. But with LSM, the 220 million Atom that's staked, I think can all be converted to Stride. So that really expands the amount of users that can onboard. And we've talked to a few kind of whales who I think are a little bit reluctant to unbond their tokens and liquid stake them. And so we're hoping after LSM we'll get more kind of inflow there. And then we've also been talking a lot with different teams on how we can kind of bootstrap more DeFi. And big shout out to the Skip team, who I think is really incentive aligned and has done a lot to kind of help more DeFi protocols come up in the space, in particular improving the UX. But yeah, I think at this point Stride is somewhat indexed to the general DeFi growth in the space, and DeFi has slowed down a little bit. But we're working hard to kickstart it again. If you guys have any suggestions, we're all ears. It's a good point, Wad. For a lot of people, it is just the fact that you can stake and sell whenever you want. And I think for a lot of people who just natively stake their Atom right now, I think a lot of those people will want to convert it to ST Atom purely so they can trade or sell or kind of have their own freedom with it. So the hope is once LSM is live, we'll get a big kind of conversion of staked Atom to liquid staked Atom. So totally agree. Particularly as liquidity gets deeper and we get the POL from the hub, should hopefully make it a little bit more attractive. Yeah, totally. But yeah, I totally do understand the last thing I'll say is just I did a dive into kind of growth charts for a lot of other high growth startups, and not just in crypto, but outside of crypto too. And I think outside of crypto, there's very normal to see like periods of a lot of growth, a little bit slow down when things get built or the macro shock, and then it recovers again. And you see this even with like DoorDash or really big, maybe not DoorDash, but like Uber have this, and a lot of other big companies have this too, where it's just periods of growth and stagnation. And you see also crypto protocols, particularly in the bear. I think crypto protocols have some really rough cycles of iteration and development to find PMF, where they try to find the features that users really want. Because overall willingness to speculate in the bear market or just use crypto or use new protocols goes down quite a bit. People are much more cautious, and rightfully so. There's not criticism, makes total sense. Or a bit more wary of take on decisions. But the hope is that we really build a really great product in this bear market, get a lot of users, get to hundreds of millions in TVL now, and then when the bull market comes, we are poised to take all of the LST market that comes up in Cosmos. Any other questions, anyone?
Yes, I'm going to bring up the last person who's got their hand raised, and then everyone else, I'll ask you guys to save your questions for tomorrow's community call, because we will have an AMA session in there as well. But thank you, Shat256, for your commentary. I'm going to bring up Mike F., who mentioned in the chat, for many ST tokens aren't even about DeFi. Don't underestimate the lure of 0-day unbonding, being able to have a token staked and be able to close that position by trading that ST token instantly is powerful. So thanks for that insight, Mike, and we're excited to hear what you have to say.
Hey, greetings, everyone. I just wanted to see if I could get you guys to clarify a little bit about once ICS goes live, what impact will that have on Stride validators, Stride delegators? What will be the purpose of staking Stride at that point? And also, will Stride validators continue to, or will the Stride network continue to maintain sovereignty over the stake positions within ST tokens, or will that be put off to the hub as well?
Yeah, these are really great questions. And so I think actually John, who's kind of leads all of our communication, has written up a blog post about this, and it should go up soon. Actually, I thought it was supposed to go up today, but maybe it got pushed back a bit. But that'll also, kind of go into a little more detail here. But I'm also happy to go into it now. So as a staker, it doesn't impact you at all. You go to MintScan, you stake normally, or wherever your wallet is, or sorry, Kepler or Leap, or wherever it is. You can stake your tokens like you normally would. The rewards will be 15% less, but everything else functions the same. And ideally, the ICS will really make ST tokens more attractive and will increase usage by well over 15%. So from a staker perspective, it's not that different. For validators, it's kind of unique. So validators become what are called governators. So they don't have to run any validator infrastructure. So it should cut down their cost quite a bit, and they retain 85% of their previous revenue. So I think it should net be quite good for the current Stride validators. And the hope is kind of two hopes from the validators. One, that they continue to do all the stuff the validators normally do that aren't associated with validating. So things like running relays, participating in governance, testing new features, promoting education about the protocol, doing BD with other protocols. There's all a host of things validators normally do. We want them to keep doing that, even if they're not actually validating. And then the second hope is that once ICS v3 or mesh security comes out, Stride transitions to that, whenever possible. And then the governators go back to being validators. So the governor is maybe like a temporary state, and they'll revert after a little bit. And so that's kind of the status there. And then in terms of sovereignty, really great question. So Stride remains sovereign. So votes will still happen on Stride, and they get they go through the standard Stride voting period. And so the hub doesn't really do anything there. Stride also retains the right to exit. So token holders vote for it. Stride can offload as the consumer chain. So that sovereignty is always there. The main thing is the Stride validators, the one that are running the binaries. They're the ones that make sure, hey, are all the transactions properly, the chain running smoothly, etc. But as to the contents of those in that chain, it's still controlled by Stride. I believe it might have to go through the hub unbonding period to actually do any software upgrades on Stride. But it ultimately Stride token holders kind of retain all sovereignty. In terms of who controls ST tokens, it's a little bit of a complicated question because on the one hand, Stride token holders determine the protocol, but the protocol actually has no ability right now to unbond or move those ST tokens. It kind of just functions as exactly whatever the protocol logic is. Theoretically, someone could upgrade that protocol logic to change that, but it had to go through Stride governance again.
Okay, thank you. That pretty much.
Very long story short, it doesn't change. Okay, amazing. Yeah, happy to hear that.
Okay, guys, I think let's tap out. Let's tap out there. I think that was a really interesting conversation. I think it provided a lot of food for thought. And if we have any leftover thoughts, feel free to drop them in the chat now. This chat stays. It's a continuous thread from all of the Fireside Chat, so it'll stay there. But thank you so much to everybody who came up on the stage today to speak. It was awesome. Just getting to learn, from your questions with the rest of the community. All right, guys. Yeah. Happy Thursday. Take care, Vishal. I'll talk to you super soon, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow at our community call.
All right, everyone. Great stuff. Happy Thursday.